Now in this steam shower, we have to make sure that our studs are plumb, straight up and down, that the enclosure is square, and that the studs are at least 16 inches on center.
How'd we do?
I think we did pretty good.
Good. Now another thing that you need to keep in mind as well is all of your horizontal surfaces need to slope towards the drain in the floor. And by that, I mean this right here. This is the curb, and it's going to slope towards the drain. This right here is our rough top for our bench in here in the steam room, and it also slopes towards the drain. But also, we had to make sure that our ceiling sloped, right, Paul?
That's right. Well, it has to slope in a steam shower at least 2 inches per foot so that hot water doesn't drop on your pretty head.
We don't want that.
No!
The insulation in the steam shower is used to help prevent the temperature changes while the shower is in use from causing vapor to condense and form in the areas behind the tile work.
In this case, the insulation will also work as a solid backing for the primary shower pan membrane.
The insulation is installed directly over the stud face and is tacked into place. It should extend from one side completely to the other and should cover the ceiling and shower seat features.
Note how the insulation is notched out for the plumbing features. Remember, the backerboard fasteners will pull all the elements tightly to the stud face. And you'll notice the dry pack is different than wall mortar in that it's only 1 part cement to about 4 parts of sand. And very little water is used to mix this so that it remains very dry.
Now we've got some of the dry pack right here, and Paul has gone ahead and mixed it up for us. Take a look at this. As I clump it into a ball, you can see that it doesn't really dampen my hands, which is the perfect consistency, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so where do you want it, Paul? I'll pour it in.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the enclosure first.
Okay.
And that is that you'll notice that I've erected a little line here in a pencil line. And what this does is this gives me the height of the pre-slope at the corners so that this will slope 1/4 inch to the foot to the drain beneath the shower pan liner. Perfect. That way all that water can flow down and into the drain.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. We ready?
Yep. This is kind
cool.
of heavy. So.
It is heavy.
Yeah.
I'm going to dump that right there.
All right.
That's all we need.
Get that back out of your way.
Okay. Then we just take our wood float, we move it into our corners, and what we're going to do is we're going to form a little curb with it. And this is not rocket science now. This is just real simple to form this plane back here along this pencil line, and then we're going to move and pack the mortar into place along that line, and then we're going to pack it all the way down so that it creates a nice smooth plane right down to the drain. Okay, well Mike's bringing in that primary waterproofing now for the bottom of the shower pan.
Now another thing that we did along the insulation is we marked along the bottom where the studs are so that as we put our liner in, we know exactly where the studs are so we can attach the liner to it.
Right, and we had just attached that with roofing nails just over the top edge of that shower pan into the stud face so that it stays secure and we have a place to fold it.
Another thing that we need to keep in mind is the height of the dam with that.
Right. It's got to be 3 inches above dam height. So in our shower, that was 8 inches above the floor.
Furring strips are a necessary part of all shower installations.
They are used to make sure that the backerboard remains flat when bridging over the primary shower pan membrane.
If they're not used, the backerboard will dive out of plane when it meets the membrane near the floor mortar.
The 1/4 inch thick and 1.5 inch wide wood strips are cut to length and are tacked into place along the stud faces over the insulation.
The bottom of the strip ends just above the membrane's top edge.
They are necessary only where a difference in plane would result. In this steam shower, a water sheathing membrane is used to deter moisture from accumulating behind the backerboard layer.
While the steam shower is in use, water vapor can pass through the tiling elements that will cover this membrane.
The water sheathing membrane consists of 15-pound roofing felt, which is tacked into place with staples.
The roofing felt is cut to fit, and we are overlapping the sheets 4 inches in the horizontal and 6 inches in the vertical at all joints.
The sheets must be installed roofing style from the bottom to the top, and the sheets must overlap the primary shower pan membrane.
This allows accumulated moisture, if any, to flow down the wall recesses and into the waterproof pan liner.
For this steam shower, a 1/2 inch thick cement core backerboard not affected by moisture or water vapor was necessary.
The panels are simply cut to fit and fastened with corrosion-resistant backerboard screws or number 10 deck screws at 6 to 8 inches on center.
The important thing to remember in this shower is that we added a 1/2 inch of rigid insulation, which means that we needed at least 2 inches of screw to penetrate the wood studs beneath the layers, a minimum of 3/4 inch.
Now remember, if your walls are wider than 5 feet, it will be necessary to use a longer backer board or have a joint in the backer board wall.
Remember that any vertical joints must be continuously supported along the whole joint.
Also, in the case of wider walls, it is necessary to stagger the panels.
Note how the ceiling has a fully supported joint that parallels the front wall of the shower.
When installing the panels, leave an 1/8-inch gap between them at all joints.
The panels should never rest on the shower pan membrane, as possible punctures could result.
Once the panels have been installed, the 1/8-inch joints are completely filled with thinset and receive a layer of alkali-resistant backerboard tape embedded into the fresh mortar.
The joints are then skimmed over with more of the same mortar.
Now be sure to keep these joints as flat as possible so that the tiling steps will be easier later on.
The Custom Dickerson crew is now working on our next step. This involves the placement of the shower floor mortar bed and the finishing of the shower curb. First, place the dry pack mortar on the pan liner to provide mortar below the 2x2 16-gauge wire to follow. The wire is placed in the dry pack so that the wire will be in the approximate middle of the finished floor mortar. Then, crushed tile is placed around the drain weep holes to keep them open and unblocked by the finished mortar bed. Form mortar screeds around the perimeter that are level and provide sufficient height for a slope to drain of 1/4 inch per foot. After this, you should place dry pack, leveling it from the perimeter screed to drain. Then the drain top is unscrewed to provide enough height for the finished tile. Use a sheet of tile and a shim to set the elevation. The shim represents space for the thinset. Now use wood templates to float the outside and inside of the curb. Then finish the top of the curb, providing 1/4 inch to the foot of slope.
Now our next step is going to be waterproofing this entire area. This right here is the fiber tape with rubber guard on the top. And what we're going to be doing is putting this in all of our joints. And then this right here is our waterproofing membrane. Now the key thing to remember is you always mix it up per the manufacturer's instructions, because you got to make sure you get the right consistency so that this thing will be nice and tight and waterproof.
Well, now we're at the stage of setting our shower floor tile, but we have to do a little layout first. Now out there on the floor, we measured our tile in a row so that we know what our space is going to look like. Next thing, we come in and we measure our floor to see where it's going to go. What did we find out?
Well, what we found out based on the measurements of our floor in conjunction with the measurement of our tile is that we're actually going to have full sheets going from front to back, so we won't have any cuts front to back. However, having said that, we will have cuts going from side to side, and you were very correct in fixing it where we wouldn't have little slivers.
Yeah, we don't want little slivers. Okay, we've mixed our thin set per the manufacturer's instructions. And we're ready to get Jody here a trowel full so that she can key in this mortar on the floor.
Try to get as close to the line as possible. You know what? Just work at your pace. I know if you've been doing this for years, you're just whipping along, putting this in. You know what, Paul? I probably need a little more.
A little more?
Yeah.
No problem. And the other thing is, whenever you're working with a substrate like this that has a waterproofing layer, you want to try and not scrape the layer or cut it when you get to the notch trowel phase. It's pretty simple not to do when you have the flat side of the trowel. Problem is, when you turn around to the notch side, you don't want to bear down too much with the trowel on the substrate.
All right, I'm going to give it a go. Let me take that margin trowel and take that off.
Okay.
Thanks.
There we go.
Is that all right?
Yeah. Now let's cut that corner out. Can I get in there?
Yeah, please.
Let me just do that right there, and that right there.
Okay, here we go.
You're going to come over towards that wall just a little bit. You can see your orange line kind of underneath there. There you go, there you go, there you go, there you go. Now what we'll do is we'll take our, you just put them in by hand, and later when we get a couple of sheets in, we'll take our beading block and make sure they're all set in there good. Then we can check the coverage by lifting a couple of them.
All right, so now that that's
And just
taut,
pick up that front edge and we'll look at the coverage.
Tell you what, this one right here?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's check it out. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
plenty.
beautiful.
Plenty.
So I'm just going to tap that back down in there.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Cool. Now we're ready for the rest of it.
Cool.
Well, as you recall, we started out with a level floor. This made it unnecessary to do both a ledger or scribe line around the perimeter. We also laid out our tile in a space big enough to accommodate it so that we could check our measurements to make sure we weren't going to have any tiny little cuts on either end of our layout.
We're going to be applying our tile to the wall in a running bond pattern, which basically means we're going to be staggering our joints as we lay the tile up the wall. Now, when you're setting a running bond, the best way to make sure that you get it correct is to put a half a tile next to a full tile, then a half a tile, then a full tile, and then what you'll do is you'll stagger those joints as you work your way up.
When you're using a wet saw, there's a couple of things you need. These and these. When you're setting up for your cut, you're going to measure what you need from your inside measurement, and you're going to place the steel tape just against the blade. Don't push or it'll skew your measurement. Measure that against your tile, and in this case we need 4 inches. Remember, measure 3 times, cut once. This might be my 3rd time. I don't know, but it's right. Now, if you're going to use a rip fence, put your rip fence against your tile. Tighten it down. Make sure you don't move your tile. Make sure it's all set again. Now we're ready to go.
Inside the steam shower, I have to tell you, Mike had his work cut out for him, literally, because there were so many cuts that we had to do in our tile to accommodate all of the things that were actually going on the one wall. Here we had 2 shower heads. We also had a rain head valve that we had to cut for. We had 4 body sprays and also a steam generator that we had to create cuts for, which kind of took a lot of time. Once Mike did all of that, I tell you what, he was on a roll. Another thing that we had to consider was the placement of our soap dishes and also our shampoo and bottle shelves. So what we had to do is just kind of stand in there and kind of figure out where would be the best place to put these. Another thing that we had to keep in mind also was our border. In the corners, again, we had to make a 45-degree cut on those so we could make sure it was all nice and flush. So after the last tile was set, we let it cure overnight, and Lupe came back the next day and he grouted it. Now for our grout, we used the Mapei Curacolor S. Now the S stands for sanded. If you used U, that would stand for unsanded, but we used the S for sanded, and we mixed it per Mapei's instructions.
The first thing you want to do in applying your grout is to wet the face of the tile without leaving any standing water in the joints. Next, you force the maximum amount of grout into the joints to fully compact them. After that, you cut the excess off with your grout float held at a sharp angle. After that, you let the grout set until you can touch the joint without any grout coming back on your finger. Once that's done, you can use your nearly dry sponge to tool the joints either at a diagonal or a circular motion so that you remove all voids, pinholes, high and low spots. The final step is the final wipe using a nearly dry sponge pulled diagonally across the tile. Remember, don't use too much water or overwork these joints. That will affect the final finished product.
We've incorporated a lot of different tiles. I mean, we've got some of the travertine in with our border,
Yes.
and also we have the travertine pieces like the soap dish and also the shampoo dish. But we also had to incorporate ceramic tile that was made to look like travertine so that we could have a nice finish in here.